While they may be children's stories, you don't want to mess with fairy tale characters. Whether they have great physical strength, use handy weapons like swords, or have magic, there's a lot of power to be found in fairy tales. And Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, the latest film in the Shrek franchise, is no exception. So we figured it'd be worth trying to figure out who among our new and returning cast was the most powerful. Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and this is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish characters, weak to powerful. And a heads up, we like to warn you that this video is going to contain major spoilers, so check out the movie if you haven't already. As always, we're going to be starting with our weakest characters before working our way up to the strongest. For our weakest character, we're going with the Cricket. This shouldn't be a surprise, as while he may be a decent conscience, he still is just a cricket. He's small, allowing Jack to get rid of him easily once he gets annoyed with him, and doesn't have any weapons or defenses. He can't even get Jack to think about his actions, though we feel that's more Jack's fault than the Cricket's. Even in his big moment where he destroys the last piece of the map, the Cricket still needs a Phoenix's help to actually destroy it. For these reasons, we had to consider him as the weakest character. Next is the wannabe therapy dog, Pero. Pero is just a puppy, so we don't see him exhibit much of his own strength and power. He doesn't use his teeth or claws, since, well, Pero doesn't want to hurt anyone. Pero, admittedly, isn't the smartest member of Team Friendship, as he's easily tricked or captured. But to Pero's credit, he's more observant than some may give him credit for, since he's the only one to figure out the Posies area of his path.
What's up, Puss in Boots?
His way with words allows him to get through to people like Puss and Goldie, and he serves as an effective distraction. He may not be the strongest, but he has some small wins. Next is the Village Doctor. The Village Doctor is an ordinary human with many different hats, as he calls them. He apparently uses leeches, as most medieval times doctors tended to use back in the day, but the fact that he's still standing, even with this treatment, is impressive. Obviously, we don't see him fight, and in a fairy tale world, being just an average human is gonna put you at the bottom. Now we have Mama Luna. It can't be easy having a house filled with at least 24 or so cats, but Mama Luna manages well, being strong enough to lift huge bags of cat food every day, ripping them open with her teeth.
This is a person party, Pickles!
While not a fighter, Mama Luna is far from being a fragile old lady. She breaks her walking stick against Papa Bear's head easily, and though she's unable to fight back against him, Luna is durable to deal with being shoved headfirst into a piano, and apparently, that wasn't the first time. While she may not be all that extraordinary strength-wise, we still feel like these moments earn her a decent spot. Next is Goldilocks. Goldie is a young girl who manages to be the de facto leader of her crime family, despite only being a human. Though she's not very physically strong, she seems to be the smartest in her family, coming up with the plans for their various jobs. She's able to defend herself and fight back with her shepherd's hook, and because of her small size, she's able to be speedy and acrobatic.
You're supposed to be dead.
In one scene, she hops from bear to bear. Then, in the film's climax, she's strong enough to help pull Baby Bear out of the magic barrier. Goldie has a lot going for her, and it's no wonder why she was able to become so infamous. However, we can't rank her below the rest of her family, as their size can be considered a weakness, depending on the situation, and she still depends on the bears to provide muscle. Next is the Serpent Sisters. They're briefly seen at the end of the film's first act. They got Jack the map to the legendary wishing star. Though they're not in action, we do have to give them credit for getting something that a lot of people sought after. In their own words, they had to murder a lot of people to even get the map in the first place. They're obviously very tough, but they're goofy and clueless, as one of them ends up offending Jack with her light teasing, leading to her getting turned into gold. If we'd actually seen a few of their murders, these ladies would have made it a bit higher up on the list. Still, being our third strongest humans isn't too bad. Now we have the Baker's Dozen. Don't let the silly name fool you. They are a legitimate army. Even if they end up being fairly disposable, they're still armed with many weapons that, while not that effective against a magic forest, could still do a decent amount of damage to ordinary enemies, such as Puss in Boots. The members of the Baker's Dozen prove not only competent in battle, but are also durable, to the point where Jack is able to use them as a bridge over a huge gap and drives his carriage over them. So while they may spend most of the film dropping like flies, we can still acknowledge that they put up a good fight. Now we have the Three Bears crime family, featuring Mama Bear, Papa Bear, and Baby Bear. We're grouping all three bears together because when it comes to their physical strength, they're pretty similar. They're literal bears. They can do things from lifting heavy objects to bashing down doors with a single hit, to fighting off whatever enemies get in their way. Their size also gives them a big advantage, and while their extra weight might have slowed other characters, these bears can move fast.
Oi, baby, sniff him out.
However, they aren't the most subtle when it comes to being sneaky, hence why they originally tried to hire both Kitty and Puss for their job. But even with these small weaknesses, the three bears are still able to be a powerhouse. Just outside the podium of power, we have Kitty Saltpaws. While her legend may not be as famous or as infamous as the legend of Puss in Boots, Kitty is still powerful. Even if she doesn't have any claws, she still arms herself with swords and knives in addition to her swift paws.
I don't need style advice from Mr. Dusty Boots.
She's a master thief, being incredibly stealthy, in addition to being able to steal anything in a matter of seconds. Even when she's by herself, she's able to outwit, outrun, and outmatch whatever villains try to chase her down, and can go toe-to-toe with Puss in a fight, as well as in a battle of cuteness, where they're both equally matched. While we couldn't call her the most powerful character, it's more of a case of other characters being stronger. The Bronze Medal of Power goes to Big Jack Horner. With the goal of having all the magic in the world, Jack has spent his entire life collecting powerful and famous magical objects, stealing them from various fairy tale and classic literature characters, from Cinderella and Snow White's Wicked Witch to Mary Poppins and King Arthur. He has an entire arsenal of both short-range and long-range weapons, in addition to his personal army, the Baker's Dozen. His most powerful weapon probably has to be either his Phoenix, which he uses as a flamethrower, or his unicorn horn-shooting crossbow, which doesn't just stab people but also makes them explode into confetti. What keeps Jack from the top is that outside of his access to magical objects and weaponry, he's just a guy who doesn't have the actual skills to physically fight for himself, unlike our top two characters. The Silver Medal of Power goes to Puss in Boots. While he's maybe not as immortal or untouchable as he likes to claim, there's definitely a reason why Puss is as successful and legendary as he is. Puss is incredibly skilled, being both fast and agile enough to avoid being crushed by bigger opponents like the Mountain Giant or Jack when he eats the Wonderland cookie and grows huge. This in turn just adds to his stealthiness, allowing him to still be a great thief, even if his skills aren't as good as Kitty's.
Do you know a good place to get some gazpacho?
Puss is also a master swordsman, able to either win his fights or defend himself long enough to safely make an escape. We even see him being able to fight multiple opponents at once, and, at least according to him, prior to his fight with Death, he's never even been touched by a blade. Speaking of Death, that's why Puss is so high on the list. Although he acknowledges that he cannot permanently defeat Death, Puss is still able to briefly outfight him after several minutes of defending himself. It's impressive, showing just how strong and skilled this cat is when he puts his mind to it. The Gold Medal of Power goes to Death. Call it a bit unfair, but hey, Death is a character, so we'd say it's fair game. For the most part, Death seems practically unbeatable. He's faster than Puss. Puss wasn't able to land a hit on him, and his strength and sickle skills are both awesome and totally terrifying.
This is gonna be fun.
We also can't ignore his sharp wolf teeth and claws, even if he doesn't use them too much in combat. While yes, Puss is able to eventually win a fight against him, it's acknowledged by both Puss and Death that Death is ultimately stronger and that Puss will eventually lose, even in a fight where he tries his hardest. Even when Puss knocked him down, there was nothing physically stopping Death from trying again. Death instead only chose to surrender once he saw that Puss had actually learned his lesson and was now genuinely valuing his life. In other words, if Death hadn't been so merciful, this movie would have had a very different ending. For these reasons, we just had to name him the most powerful character in Puss in Boots 2. Alright, that's the list. Let us know in the comment section if you agree with our ranking, and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge our Weak to Powerful playlist, where we break down who the most powerful characters are in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.